or classical Latin, i.e., it was a nerdy high school. And this nerdy high school, the top 10% were able to go to the gifted class, or that's what they were called. As juniors, you were able to go and take actually college credits. And of course, everybody wanted to be part of that, but if you weren't, then you would make fun of them. Say, oh, so you are the gifted ones. Definitely gifted in strange ways. We all want to feel that we are gifted. We want people to say, hey, I can see your gifts are these things. We even want people to say about our children, your child is gifted in this or that way. Well, today Paul says that each of us have been gifted. Every one of us here have gifts. And when Paul says this, it's revolutionary. It's amazing what Paul says here. And I want to unpack this for us today. Okay? And 4 simple points. And the first point is this. Again, when Paul says every one of us is gifted, it is a revolutionary idea. Because in those times, and I think it's still true even today, most people thought ability was connected to your birth. Right? You were born with certain ability, and that separated you. So it was what philosophers might say, ontological difference. And so there was always different hierarchy. It was a different social class. And the most extreme form of this, which we probably know well, is the Hindu caste system. If we go to the next slide. In the Hindu caste system, we have the Brahmins, right? And they were the only ones gifted, had the ability to be priests. And of course, this was their birthright. It belonged to them. Right? So only they could do it. And then under it were the Kshatriyas, and they're the warriors. Again, they were born with this gift to be able to fight. And so they were the only ones who would take arms. And then Vaishyas, and here's where people are less gifted, right? They are the ones, they can't represent the gods. They can't fight, but they are merchants and landowners. And then under them are Shudras, and they are the commoners and the peasants, and they are only to serve the classes above them. And then, of course, under it were the untouchables. And they would be the street sweepers, right? The latrine cleaners, because after all, they were born without any gifts. So they got to do the dirty works of the society. Everyone was gifted or not gifted by their birth. And it was an ontological difference. It made different value of that person. And so then the Brahmin could not marry the outcasts, the untouchables. Even today in India, as modern as it has become, even Western educated people still look down upon when a Brahmin marries an untouchable. Now, this was true of most all cultures. So even in the Roman and Greek Empire, there are philosophers, and not everyone was born to be philosophers. Some people just didn't have the knowledge and the ability, mental ability to do that. And so there was difference of caste in most anything. So even in Judaism too, right? Not everyone could become priests. Only those who were born in the Levite, they could be the priests. And then within the Levite, only the people who were descendants of Aaron were to be the high priests. So you see, birthright gave them ability and gifts. You cannot do that. But in this understanding of the world, Paul says, every one of you has a gift. And it's not because of who you are, but did you hear that? Because of what Christ in His grace has given to you. So that means you're no longer locked. You can no longer judge people. It is not their person's value and birth. It is what Christ has given to each and every one. A gift. So in the society, to show you how revolutionary this was. When you were born, you basically lived and died and did what your father did. Right? There was no mobility. So, if your father was a slave, then you are a slave. But in the church, the slave can receive communion with the master, and a slave can become a deacon, and that's revolutionary. You're born a farmer, then that's all you can do. Obviously, that's your gift. That's what you can do only. So you live and die as a farmer. If your parents was a fisherman, then you're born a fisherman and you will die as a fisherman. But then, Peter, who was born a fisherman, does not die in the Lake of Galilee. He becomes an apostle, writes letters that people read and say these are the teachings of God, and gives his life in Rome. That's revolutionary. Every one of you, God has given you a gift. Don't let the society judge you by the place of your birth or the color or the class. We still have a similar, perhaps not as strict, casteism, don't we? We still say today, and there's some studies out there, right? For example, in the Taliban say women should not go to school because obviously they're not gifted in that. They should only stay home, right? Make children. Right? Even in the Western society, don't we tend to think that men are better than women in computers? Or that only certain type of people can be good leaders? Right? We have that sense. But again, against that, Paul says, no. Gift is not your birthright. It is gift, as it is said, which Christ accomplishes and gives it to you. And of course, Paul himself is an example of that too. Think about that. Paul calls himself an apostle. He has no right to call himself an apostle. What right does he have? He was not one of the 12 that walked with Jesus. Right? And he, in fact, even murdered a leader of the church. And yet, with that resume, when you first started, I was like your main enemy and I murdered. Can I still be an apostle? But the church accepts him as an apostle. Why? Because gifts, right? Calling is the work of Christ. And so even Peter himself writes in one of his letters, Paul writes, and when he writes, it's kind of difficult to understand, but there's truth in it. It was revolutionary. Where in the society, everything was static and you were locked, and that gave you your value in the hierarchy. In the church, everyone has value because everyone is gifted, and that gift is from Christ. And that's the second point. The idea that everyone is gifted was a revolutionary idea. And secondly, that this gift is an accomplishment of Christ and never our accomplishment. It wasn't a birthright. It wasn't something that we deserved, but it was what Christ accomplished. Did you see that? So he actually says in Ephesians 4:7, when he ascended to the heights, he led a crowd of captives and gave gifts to his people. And he quotes this from Psalm 68. And if we could turn to Psalm 68, because we might mistake this understanding here, right? When he talks about this going up to the heavens and taking the captives, and we tend to kind of make it so spiritual. Like, does this mean that he went down to the hell and bring demons out? It doesn't mean that at all. Paul is firmly rooted in the Judaistic worldview. In Psalm 68, verse 18, if it's not up there, I'll just read it to you. It reads like this. When you ascended to the heights, you led a crowd of captives. You received gifts from the people, even from those who rebelled against you. Now the Lord God will live among us there. Okay? What basically the psalm is saying is about how a king would enter into his city. Right? It's an exaltation of what the king has done. He has vanquished the enemies, and so now he brings these gifts to the people. There are two versions of this psalm. This version here is about him receiving gifts from the people. But the psalm that he uses, Paul, and here's a little Bible study, right? The Septuagint, which is the Greek version of the Hebrew Bible, he uses the other version where it says that God, the king who comes and gives the gifts to the people. And of course, in any entrance like this, that's what happens. The king comes, and of course, the people lay down their gifts in the wind saying, "Oh, welcome, king." And of course, the king, in whatever place that he's vanquished, he brings the gifts. And sometimes it could be wild, exotic animals from the area, or even some slaves. Now, he takes the image, and he says, this is what Christ does for us. Our gifts are not our birthrights. It is what Christ has accomplished. So when Christ died, he went down, he died for our sin. When Christ rose, it showed that he was a chosen one of God. And then when Christ was exalted, sit on the Father's hand, it wasn't to escape the world, like, oh, I'm done with the work, I'm done. No, he goes up so that he could get the gifts and pour it down to us. And we saw this, right? In the book of Acts. If you read the book of Acts, when Jesus Christ says, just wait, when I return to the Father, the Holy Spirit will come down. And when the Holy Spirit comes down, everybody is given gifts. This humbles us, doesn't it? So the first thing, that we all have gifts is a revolutionary idea. It equalizes the whole playing field. And then secondly, that the gifts is the accomplishment of Christ. So it's not our accomplishment. It's not what we have done with it. We can't boast about it. There is no looking down, condemning, contemptuous look, because it's what Christ has done. We didn't deserve these gifts. It was only because Christ has done all the work. It humbles us. But then the third thing is this. If we truly believe that these gifts is what Christ has given to us, it also then emboldens us to use them. It humbles us when we use it. We can't boast about it. But because it was Christ, it also does what seems paradoxically the opposite, but it emboldens us to use these gifts. I wonder if most of us don't suffer so much from the arrogance of the gifts, but from the, what does my gift matter anyway? It's so small. I wonder what people will say when I say, I have these gifts. Will people judge me? We compare our gifts to others and we think they're not really of value, and then we let them go to waste. Now, it is true. Christ gives different measures of gift, right? So everyone's gifted, but not everyone is a prodigy. Right? That's the fact of life. Right? This is the Christ's dispensation of grace. Right? I know as parents, we would all like to believe that our children are prodigies. Now, I remember when I was in a class and one parent was boasting that her girl skipped third grade math and went to fourth grade math, and said, oh, she's such a prodigy. And I said, well, she might be gifted, but that's not a prodigy. A prodigy is Paul Erdos, who at 4 years old would ask an adult, when's your birth date? And once she finds out the month and the day and the year, he would tell that person how many seconds he lived. That is a prodigy. Your child is just gifted. I said that, of course, in my head. In my head. In my head. But we look at these prodigies and we think, oh, those are truly gifted. And what is this that we have? And it's nothing compared to that. And so we tend not to use it. Do you remember the story, the parable that just tells us about the master going away and he gives the 5 talents and the 3 talents and the 1 talent. The 5 talent does something with it and the 3 talent does something with it. But the 1 talent, he's kind of pissed off, right? He's like, this master is not generous, and so he doesn't do anything with it. But what he fails to realize that the amount is not the issue there. If you read the parable carefully, it's about the joy that the father, the master, wants to share with the servant. And the joy that the servant gets when he makes something out of it. The 5 and the 3 and the 1 doesn't matter to the master. It's the joy that he wants to share. But this one with the 1 talent fails to see that, compares himself to others, and doesn't use it. And that's where I think most people fail to use the gift they have been given. Now, when you think about it, where is the value of the gift? Is it in the amount, or is it in the giver? Isn't it the giver? And this is why, again, Paul is just amazing. He connects the gift to what Christ did and Christ gives. Because the value of any gift is really on the giver. Like heirlooms that we might have, right? It's not the material that's so precious, right? It could be anything. It could be like a record, right? A tape recorder of a mix. But this is the mix that my dad made when I went to college. Yeah, it's the giver that gives the value to the gift, even if the mix has songs that you will never sing in your life again. It's the giver. Right? Think about it, right? The reason why we seek autographs, right? Autograph this arm, I'm never gonna wash it. It's the giver, the person who puts his name on it. There was a list that I found of the top 10 most valuable autographs. The top 10 most valuable autographs. Anybody has a guess to which would be number 1? The number 1 top grossing autographs. Any guesses? It's Neil Armstrong. Why is Neil Armstrong's autograph the most precious, most valuable? Because he's the only one who could say, I was the first person to walk on the moon. Can anybody say that? Right. Michael Jordan had 6 rings, but other people had 1 rings too. But Neil Armstrong, he found out that his barber would cut his hair and sell it for $3,000. And so when he found that out, he stopped signing anything because he realized once he signs, people go bring it to the market and crazy things happen. So in the 40th annual celebration of Apollo 11 mission in the Congress, Nancy Pelosi, the House Representative, Speaker of the House Representative, came to him and said, can you sign this? And Neil Armstrong said, no. Right. But I'm the Speaker of the House. Well, I walked on the moon. So I said no. Because he walked on the moon, he could walk on anybody, right? He refused to sign because of the value it brings and what people do with it. Now think about it. So he went up to the moon, and just his penmanship, the wrist, right? Pen is valuable. But what Paul is saying is Christ, who is exalted way above any moons, exalted above the heavens. And he is the only one who defeated death. He says, I give you this gift. 5, 3, 1. The value is not how much, the giver. Your gifts are that precious, that important. The preacher who preaches in the megachurch or the preacher who preaches in the Amazon jungle, to the world, the one in the Amazon jungle might not even be registered because we don't even know. But that gift is the same gift that Christ got through his death and resurrection and exaltation. It's a precious gift. Every one of you are gifted, and every one of you has a priceless gift that no one else has. The most important thing is using them, courageously using them. Malala Yousafzai, I think that's her last name, she was the youngest to win the Nobel Peace Prize at the age of 17, right? Which makes you think, what was I doing at 17? That's kind of depressing. She went and spoke at the UN, 400 international leaders, and after she spoke, returned to the hotel, and her youngest brother said to her, this was in her biography, why are you so famous? What have you done? And now it wasn't that the younger brother was still jealous, but it was true. What has she done? See, she wasn't a prodigy. In fact, again, the Bible tells she was bad in math and she failed one class. She had a gift. It was that she could write, because she loves writing, and she could speak well. She wasn't even always the best speaker or even the best writer. At the age of 11, or when Taliban was taking over her area, the international news agency came and said, can you write a blog so people outside could know what it is to live under the regime? And they had asked another girl to write that blog. But the father was so afraid for the girl's life that they refused. And then Malala was there and said, I could do it. And that was the trajectory for her. And so all she was saying was, women, girls, have the right for education. And she spoke. She was eloquent, gifted, not the greatest, not a prodigy, but she spoke. At the age of 14, Taliban came. Is your name Malala? Yes, I am. And shot her 3 times. Miraculously, she survived that. What has she done? She just used her gift. And in that situation, using that gift was dangerous. But she was courageous. It wasn't because she was the most gifted person that she got that platform, but because she was courageous enough to use the gift that she has. Every one of us is gifted. Don't bury it. Be courageous and use it. And the last one is this. So first, the idea that everyone's gifted is a revolutionary idea, that the gift is from Christ's accomplishment, so it humbles us and also then gives us confidence and emboldens us to use it. And the last thing is this gift, Paul is very clear, is to be used for the growth and the unity of the church. So it says here, we'll skip it to Ephesians chapter 4, from verse 14 through 16. Then we will no longer be immature like children. We won't be tossed and blown about by every wind of new teaching. We will not be influenced when people try to trick us with lies so clever they sound like the truth. Instead, we will speak the truth in love, growing in every way more and more like Christ, who is the head of his body, the church. He makes the whole body fit together perfectly, as each part does its own special work. There it is. As he talks about the gifts, everyone's gifted. Now you do your own special work. And when you do it, it helps other parts grow so that the whole body is healthy and growing and full of love. And that's where we see how we can best use our gifts. When we use our gifts to a certain extent that the community is all growing together. Gifts are for the growth of the body of Christ. But it's sad that quite often gifts become the division of the church. I met with Reverend Donald Reyno, who does the Council of Prayer for Raleigh. So he gathers all these pastors, brings them to a retreat center, all fully paid, has a prayer meeting of all the Raleigh pastors. And of this experience, he says, I believe the church is divided by the gifts. So those who are gifted with the charismatic gifts, they all say, this is the most important gift. If you don't speak in tongue, you're not saved. I remember in my youth year too, we had the one retreat experience, people spoke in tongue, and then there was this conversation about, do you speak in tongue? Do you speak in tongue? Maybe you're not saved. It's so easy for us to use the gifts. It wasn't intended to, as we saw, it was intended to bring unity, but it used it to divide because we keep forgetting that the gifts are the accomplishments of Christ for us to be used. Not a way for us to say, this is the only way to serve Christ. But that's how it goes. And then we Presbyterians too. So those people who are gifted more in the teaching, we say, well, the mark of a church is the word and sacrament. So if there's no good preaching, there is no church. What is that? Just emphasizing one gift. Paul says, your gifts is not used, should not be used to divide the church. Now, I know the temptation for this is easy. Because gift doesn't just mean skills. Think about this. Anytime when anyone has some special skill, it's not just this ability, but it's a whole way of looking at the world, isn't it? It's because that person looks at this world in this unique way that that person has this gift. For example, I like teaching and preaching is really about always looking at the world and see what metaphors it has for spiritual truth. So everywhere I go, I see sermon illustrations, right? So whenever Ian does something, I'm like, sermon illustration? Right? I see a flower, sermon illustration. An artist doesn't see sermon illustrations. An artist sees colors and shapes. Someone who's more scientifically minded will see a flower and doesn't see colors and shapes so much, but what its Latin name, right? How it grew and all that stuff. Of course, our gifts is connected to how we see the world. It's deep inside of us. But we must remember that those gifts is given by Christ, and each one has it. That means everyone has a different way of seeing God and the world, and that is okay. That is how Christ chose to give to us. And so when we use our gifts, if we can remember that it's Christ's accomplishment, and when we just do our part without judging other people, then naturally, all these gifts allows the different cells of the body to grow together. Doesn't it? Paul uses a metaphor of the body, and of course he didn't have a scientific understanding today, but it's so amazing that his metaphor is even more powerful now that we know more about the body. Think about growth. Growth is basically differentiation with unity, isn't it? You have to differentiate. And yet as you differentiate, you have to be united. How a single cell becomes trillion cells of this human body. Anytime one cell goes and says, oh, you're not doing your job, I will do your job for you, and then gobbles it up and makes his way of doing things the only way, you and I know that is what we call cancer. What would happen if we use our gifts, and every one of us gifts, and we respect the other person's gift? And so we look at the bone cells, and the bone cells are sturdy and strong, and they don't seem to move a lot in their thoughts, but well, that's how God made you. Great. Right? And blood cells, they're flowing, and they're always giving to others. They're always flexible, but that's great. Skin cells, they always care about how he looks, and looks a little vain, but they're skin cells, and they have a part to do. And what if every cell recognizes other people's gifts as the accomplishment of Christ? And we simply just do our part. Then all of this will grow into one beautiful, healthy body of Christ. My prayer for our church is this. I want a church where every one of your gifts is unleashed. Because every one of you guys have a special gift. It shouldn't be just one person. Right? I should not be the main person. In fact, as we grow, and as God blesses us, I want to share this pulpit. There's people who are different people who are gifted in the preaching and teaching. And I want to invite them and be able to teach and preach with me. Right? Music is one way, right? If you are musically gifted, use that music gift. Right? Counseling, caring, administration, and this is just a very short list. And there's so many other gifts. Whatever gifts you have, even if you think my gift has nothing to do with church work, I don't know how to use it, let me know, and I'll find a way. Because I don't want any one of us to simply bury our gifts and miss an opportunity to share in God's joy. Let us use the gifts that God has given us. Let's pray.